going on, everyone? So we are just over 1 week away from Avengers Infinity War. It is one of my most anticipated movies of the entire year. I'm hoping that it's great, but it came to my mind that I've never done a top 10 superhero movies video. I've done a ranking of the MCU movies, but I have yet to do a top 10 superhero movies video. Crazy, I know, but I figured I may as well do it right now, leading up to Avengers Infinity War next weekend. Disclaimer, I have not seen every single superhero movie ever. This list will mainly consist of all DC and Marvel movies, nothing else beyond that pretty much. When I say I have not seen every superhero movie, I mean I have not seen the newest X-Men movies, the new era of those films. I also have not seen a lot of movies that came out before my time, such as many of the old original Superman movies, the Batman movies from the 90s and 80s. Have not seen most of those. So do not get mad if there are some of those classic superhero movies not on this list. These are the movies that I have seen and the movies that I have loved in terms of the superhero genre. So without further ado, let's begin with number 10. Out of the movies I've seen from the series, this just happens to be my favorite. X2, this is the second X-Men movie. To me, this is the grittiest, most violent X-Men movie of the original series. I love the cast here. What makes this movie so great, though, however, is the fact that this movie unites all of the X-Men. Magneto, the villain from the first movie, joins forces with Wolverine and his X-Men gang. This is really why this movie is so good and so much better compared to the first one, because this is the first glance we got at seeing superheroes unite and taking out a similar enemy both sides share. X2 also brings back those layered themes which made the first movie so good and also expands on that. If you have not seen X2, go see it. It is my favorite of the original X-Men trilogy from the early 2000s. Number 9. Controversial, I know. Do I care? Not really at all. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 comes here at number 9. I know a lot of people had different opinions on this movie, but in my opinion, this is one of the best superhero movies ever made. It is top 3 for me right now in terms of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's just that good, the way I see it at least. First off, I have to say, this is one of the funniest MCU movies we've had thus far. All of the jokes hit me so hard. But it's not just the comedy that makes this movie so good. It's also the character development and how well put to use every character was in this movie. There was not a single character on the good guy side I did not care about. Every single person in this movie I truly cared about. And let's start talking about Kurt Russell as the villain here, Ego. Incredible, one of my favorite villains in the MCU movies so far. He was so good in this role. There were plenty of surprises, and the finale of this movie is one of the best. I love Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I know I've talked about it so much over the last year, but yes, this movie, in my opinion, I feel like is so underrated. Number 8. One of my other favorite movies from 2017, that's right, Wonder Woman. I have the poster behind me. I've had it for quite a while now, ever since December, and there's a reason for it. I love Wonder Woman. Gal Gadot and Chris Pine on the screen together were one of the best duos we saw last year. These two had excellent chemistry. There was nobody else, I think, that could have played these two roles better. Gal Gadot, she is the model Wonder Woman, and nobody, I think, could ever replace her playing this character. She's just that good. The action sequences are on point. The CGI is perfect in this movie. In Wonder Woman, the CGI as well as the color scheme does not seem fake. It doesn't look like it did the way in Batman vs. Superman. We don't have that anymore with this movie. Instead, we're given a more authentic take on the world. It looks realistic. And World War I in this film is captured so well. There's multiple character moments that I loved. This movie is something that I adore from beginning to end. Number 7. Probably the nerdiest movie ever made. Captain America Civil War comes here at number 7 on my top 10 favorite superhero movies list. This movie has an excellent setup from the beginning, and from then on, you are glued to the screen. And eventually at the end, you have probably the greatest action sequence in MCU history. You know what I'm talking about, the airport sequence. This thing is awesome, where we have Cap's side going against Iron Man's side. The introduction to Spider-Man is here. All of it was executed so good. It is one of the best scenes in the history of superhero movies. But this movie also creates a dilemma. Who's right? Is it Captain America or is it Iron Man? We're not sure, and the way the movie makes you dwell about this topic certainly puts a lot of different opinions inside your head. It's very confusing, but it all makes for a better film. Number 6. Here's where we start getting into some of the best movies, not only for superhero movies, but movies in general. Batman Begins is right here, smack in the middle at number 6 on this list. I love the Dark Knight trilogy. If you are a fan of superhero movies, you will love the Dark Knight trilogy, or even if you're just a fan of movies in general, you will love the Dark Knight trilogy, no doubt about it. This is a great opening movie for this amazing trilogy, probably the best of all time. Christopher Nolan's direction in this film is superb. There is not one flaw with it. There are so many memorable moments. The only problem I've ever had with Batman Begins is how the time is misconstrued. We're in one place to start and then in another place in the next scene. It's all kind of around there in the beginning, but it's not that big of a deal. Liam Neeson is terrific in this movie. Cillian Murphy is also another great villain this film has to offer. But Christian Bale clearly steals the show as his first performance as Bruce Wayne / Batman. The action sequences don't pop out at you as much as they do in the next two films, but still, this movie does deliver some truly satisfying sequences, and Batman Begins is one of the best beginnings to any trilogy out there. Number 5. Now let me talk about my favorite MCU movie of all time. Once again, Captain America, the Winter Soldier delivers some of the greatest action sequences in cinema history. I think film classes should show some of these action sequences for the next century because they are that good. These are scenes worth studying. You don't have scenes like this on a daily basis in superhero movies. This movie is able to transcend the action scenes we had in the prior MCU movies before this. But this movie does something so well, and that is how all of the action sequences are white-knuckled. They are gritty, intense, very gruesome. All of it is awesome. It reminds me of Sicario in a way. I love Chris Evans as well as Scarlett Johansson, who gets her biggest role so far in the MCU. Both of them were excellent on the screen together. Robert Redford as this movie's villain was amazing. I loved him in this movie. There is a whole huge reveal in this film about the Shield and what's going on behind the scenes there. I love it how this movie is a spy espionage thriller kind of. We also have introduction to other great characters here. Oh my god, The Winter Soldier is a terrific MCU movie. It is still my favorite MCU film to date. Number 4. Yes, we return to a trilogy I already mentioned earlier in this list, and now here at number 4, it is The Dark Knight Rises, a movie that I've had very different opinions of over the past couple of years. At first, this was actually my favorite Batman movie in the Christopher Nolan trilogy, but now I would say it's second behind The Dark Knight because this one has just too of a convoluted plot. There are so many different characters introduced here, and the movie's not able to balance them all out. We barely have a clue what some of these characters are even doing here. They're just in the film for the sake of being in there. But nonetheless, this movie is amazing. One of my favorite movies of all time still, no doubt about that. The cast here is stellar. Nobody is bad here. Everybody is at their very best. From Christian Bale to Michael Caine, everybody is fantastic here. But let me get into Tom Hardy as Bane because he is the show stealer of this film. Some scenes I can't quite understand him, but he is still awesome as Bane. So big and strong. He absolutely dominates Batman in one scene here where my mouth just dropped. But the reason why I love The Dark Knight Rises so much is because of the ending. It reminds me of Inception. These two are very similar movies in terms of ending. Both are extremely epic. In terms of epicness alone, I would say this is by far the most epic out of any Christopher Nolan movie that's not named Inception. Christopher Nolan knew how to make a grand film with The Dark Knight Rises. The last hour is adrenaline pumping. I got chills all over my body the first time I watched it, and to this day, the same exact thing happens. Yes, there are a couple problems with the script and some things that don't really quite make sense, but I still think this is one of the most epic movies I've ever seen, and that's why it is number 4 on my list.
Number 3.
Starting here at number 3 is a film trilogy that I barely have ever talked about, but at the same time, it might be my favorite trilogy ever. Spider-Man 2. Tobey Maguire is my favorite Spider-Man. Nobody will ever be able to replace him. Tom Holland, Andrew Garfield, I'm very sorry, but you will never be Tobey Maguire. He is the Spider-Man to me. And in this movie, we get much more of Peter Parker than the character Spider-Man. Yes, we do have those moments with Spider-Man, but the character development done for Peter Parker in this movie is so much better than what we got in the first Spider-Man, and obviously way better than anything we got in Spider-Man 3. The characters in this movie are fleshed out to the whole between Peter Parker, Mary Jane, Harry Osborn, Doc Ock, all of them. They are so good in this movie. The performances led by Tobey Maguire, Kirsten Dunst, James Franco, Alfred Molina, all of them are terrific. As I said, the action sequences are really good in this movie. The train sequence between Doc Ock and Peter Parker is just one of the best action sequences in superhero and movie history. While Spider-Man 2 might not have the emotional impact that Spider-Man 1 had, I still feel like the character development is good enough to make it number 3 on my list.
Number 2.
At number 2, following Spider-Man 2, is the original Spider-Man from 2002. This is the PG-13 movie that I grew up with. Usually as a kid I was not allowed to watch PG-13 or R-rated movies, but this is that one exception because of the cast, because of it being just a superhero movie in general. Parents don't really care too much about it, and I watched this movie so many times as a little kid. I think the first time I watched this movie was probably around kindergarten, but from day one to now, I still adore the original Spider-Man. Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin to this day is actually still my favorite villain in film history. He is that good, that memorable. I love Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin in this movie. He nailed that role. But also the other performances, once again, are terrific. I love the opening with Peter Parker being in high school. It's interesting to see how he is bullied, but eventually gains his powers and starts protecting the world. There is some emotion in this movie, which I feel the two after this lacked a little bit, but with Uncle Ben's death, all of that makes me cry to this day. It is so emotionally pounding, but at the same time, it is so well executed. And the ending here is white knuckle, so gritty, very violent, but all for the better. We don't see this in the newer Spider-Man movie / superhero movies these days. Everything this movie did was spectacular, and to this day, it all holds up. I have not one single flaw with the original Spider-Man. It is one of my favorite movies ever.
Number 1.
And finally, here at number 1, it is my favorite superhero movie of all time. I'm guessing you guys probably know what it is already, but of course, it is The Dark Knight, a movie that I reviewed already, and rightfully so. I gave this movie a 100%. It deserves it. This is the best superhero movie ever made, hands down. Christopher Nolan knows how to move from just making regular movies to superhero movies. This is the movie that transcended everything done in terms of the superhero genre, and that is because of Heath Ledger and what he did with this character, the Joker. He is phenomenal. Maybe one of the greatest performances of all time. He was this character. But let me mention all of the amazing performances, once again led by Christian Bale, who of course is great as Batman. The action here, I think, is the best in the entire trilogy. It is some of the darkest action we've had in the trilogy, as well as all of the awesome moments this movie has filled throughout. There are so many to talk about, but I've already mentioned them before. I will leave the link to my review in the description below. Be sure to check it out, but as you guys know, I love The Dark Knight. There is not one single flaw with this movie, and the soundtrack too makes it even better. The Dark Knight is one of the greatest movies of all time, not just in terms of superhero movies, but in terms of movies in general. Alright, and that is my top 10 favorite superhero movies list. Let me know down below in the comment section what your top 10 are. So with the lead up to Avengers Infinity War next weekend, I'm going to continue doing more superhero reviews, including a few MCU movie reviews, as well as some more rankings videos. So get ready for my lead up to Avengers Infinity War, guys. If you are new to my channel, click the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and I hope you all have a fantastic day.